Deep Threat Sports Network, we're back with another episode of Crease to Crease. Tonight, it's just me and my boy Ron. We're going to dive deep into some hockey for you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about how everything we mentioned last week we missed on for the most part. We're going to talk about some injury updates, our teams of the week from the last week, what we kind of have on tap this next coming week, and then we're going to dive a little bit into the milestones and some more buy sell on some fantasy and overall bets. But first, real quick, Ron, how was your week, buddy? It's been a week since we did this, and I'm excited to be back with you again. Obviously, no Josh, no Marty tonight. Marty's got some family things going on, and so does Josh as well. They'll be back with us next week. Looking forward to bringing them back, but tonight you just have me and Ron. Ron, how was your week? Did you get to watch some hockey? How was it for you?
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the hockey this week. I was traveling again, as I seem to be doing a lot lately, but I try to pick up updates and highlights off my iPad when I'm on the road or pick up a game when I'm traveling. So a lot of exciting things happening in the league right now. I know we're going to touch on here in a little bit how some of the things we discussed last week did a total 180 and maybe lit a fire on somebody under some of these guys, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, it sure feels like we gave some of these teams and players some real poster board material in their locker room and clubhouse. But man, this has been a super electric and exciting hockey season thus far, man. Everybody's back and forth. Like we 2 weeks ago we were talking about how we saw real contenders and we thought it was like very few teams. Now we're kind of seeing the parity come into play. But the scoreboards, these teams are still lighting the lamp
Yeah,
constantly, and
yeah.
that's what's made this so fun. But let's talk a little bit about some things we missed on last week. I shit all over San Jose Sharks, and buddy, I think they went 3-1
They
after
heard you.
we talked bad about them. They were winless, and we got through to them. And you know what? I'm glad we did because that was unacceptable. I'm actually going to touch on them a little bit later in a weekly recap. So I don't want to give too much away with that. We also had Josh and the rest of us really tear apart Parayko. And, he lights the lamp, a couple more times, scores, get some points on the board since then. We talked about Toronto, and then they end up having a great week. We talk about Winnipeg being a team to beat and absolutely electric, and I still think they are. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
you
I
probably
would agree.
agree.
Yeah.
But then they go through and they lose a couple games. So I mean, how funny is this that it really felt like, and our group text was constantly going off all week, like, well, that didn't age well. Hey, that didn't age well. Neither did that. So we wanted to bring that to light. If you follow all of our other shows on Deep Threat Sports Network, when we're wrong, we're going to tell you that we're wrong. And we were wrong about some things this week. I don't think that means we're wrong for the long term of the season, though. Do you?
No, I think hey, it's an 82 game season and these guys are going to grind it out. They're going to hit peaks and valleys. I mean, honestly, you're spot on. It just felt like everything that we brought up in the last episode, we just were kind of scratching our heads saying, wait, how in the world did Parayko get 2 goals in one game, one on the power play? I mean, we were basically saying he was just dead money on that team, slow, flat-footed, and here he is putting up 2 goals. I think it was against Montreal. So yeah, it's just kind of the season how it flows. And by no means, when we say we're going to fade somebody, does that mean it's for the season? It's just kind of a current recap of where they're at. But I'm excited to kind of go through some of the things that are happening this week with some of the highlights that we're going to bring to you guys tonight.
I think the term we actually used for Parayko was orange cone. I think we
Yeah,
used that
construction
many
cone.
a times for him last week, and when we were talking about it, I mean, it was true. And to be honest with you, I don't want to keep harping on him a little bit, but I don't really think that my opinion about the orange cone thing changes entirely. I mean, he had a couple good games here, but I'd like to see it night in, night out because I feel like he takes some games off. But so real
Yeah.
quick, Ron, since we don't have Josh to really dive into his injury segment this week, why don't you go ahead and touch on some of the injuries that you think are key or play an important role going forward here?
Yeah, well, obviously, as you guys all know, the big one is Connor McDavid, who suffered that lower body injury. They initially projected him to be out 2 to 3 weeks. I did read just today that he's on the ice. Obviously, no contact, but he's out skating. So, when he went through his knee injury a few seasons ago, they actually did a special on it, just showing how he went through his recovery and his training and rehabilitation. And, I don't expect him to be out more than 3 weeks, and most likely he'll be back sooner than that. So, obviously that's the big hit. Draisaitl has stepped up. I don't know if you saw that game the other night. He had one of the prettiest backhand shots I've seen in a long time. Top shelved it from the backhand right there in the slot. So he's caught fire. He's picked that team up. Obviously they need McDavid back, and hopefully he'll be back in a few weeks. The Blues lost Philip Broberg to a lower body injury. It actually looked really, really bad, Collin. I don't know if you saw the play, but he's lucky he didn't damage it real bad because the guy put the full weight of it on him. But they're projecting him to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep you guys posted. Tyler Seguin, minor injury, lower body, day to day. He's a big part of Dallas, leading some of those young guys that we've talked about in the past. And then Matthew Barzal has an upper body injury just the other day, and he's going to be out for a while. It's part of hockey, and losing a guy like McDavid or Broberg, who's actually been really good for the Blues, and a veteran like Seguin can really impact these teams going forward. So let's hope those guys get back soon.
Yeah, these teams need these guys back, and obviously, stating the obvious, McDavid is the one that catches everybody's eye, and rightfully so. It's the best player in hockey, right? So, I mean, that's the one that everybody wants to talk about. But since we really kind of talk about the Blues quite a bit here, and we are a St. Louis team, I mean, our St. Louis-based podcast, Philip Broberg being out is not good. I mean, this was a guy that I think just last week, Ron, I was talking about how he's been the player of the season so far for the Blues,
Yeah.
and now you got 4 to 6 weeks shelved, and that's if all things go according to plan. That's not good because the defense is already thin, doesn't play great in most games, and Bennington has a lot fall on his plate. So hopefully he can get back, and obviously Letty, is going to hopefully step into and play a good role in this. But I mean, Broberg, this could hurt.
Yeah. Hey, and the timing of Parayko, picking up some of the slack with those 2 goals against Toronto last week. Maybe he's going to turn the corner and pick up some of that slack that Broberg they're going to miss with Broberg being out.
I
Let's
hope,
hope.
man. Yeah, let's hope. I mean, let's hope that he plays at least up to 60% of what he's getting paid. I mean, let's hope that really turns out. I mean, I don't want to set the bar too high and hope he's worth every penny because he'd have a massive step to take. But with all that being said, let's get off the negativity with the injuries here, and let's turn the page and let's talk about who were a couple of our teams of the week. Whether that be good, bad, or otherwise. Let's really focus on what we had this past week. So, Ron, you can since we're missing the other two guys, we'll still try to cover four. You take one, I'll take one, then you take one, and I'll take one. So, with
All
that
right,
being
good.
said, fire away and give me your first one here.
Team of the week from last week is the Minnesota Wild, and I believe they're 7-1 in their last 8, and have played. They haven't played walkaway teams. They've been going up against some of the league's better teams, and Gustafson's been playing really well. He's actually one of the top statistics, goalie statistics in the league right now. He's putting up some really, really good numbers. Kirill the Thrill actually leads the league now in scoring. They have jumped on his back, Collin, and they are making some waves. They get 18 points. They're in 3rd place overall in the league. They're only behind Winnipeg in the Central, and I think Florida in the East. So 7-1-2 in their last 10. Goal differential of 13. Matt Boldy's been playing really, really well. So I think the Stars are putting it together. Matt Zuccarelli's actually putting up some good numbers he's got to be in his mid-30s by now. So
Yeah.
watch out for Minnesota. If Gustafson gets hot, they're gonna be a team to deal with in the Central and in the West in general. So they beat Tampa twice, they beat Florida, they beat Toronto, they picked up a win against Pittsburgh, which Pittsburgh hasn't been that great this year. I think they're 5-7 on the year, but they're playing really, really well, and they have a pretty good schedule coming up, the next week or two. I don't know if you've never been up to St. Paul for a game, Collin. That Excel Energy Arena is one of the best places I've seen a hockey game. I've been to probably 10 to 12 different arenas across the league. That place is probably one of my favorite arenas in the country. So
Hey, they flat get up for hockey, man.
they don't
And
mess around. I mean, it's state of hockey, right? Minnesota, the state of hockey.
absolutely.
That's their banner they fly. So it's exciting to watch Kirill out there, and I think he's obviously the leader of that team. He's got another year on under his $9 million contract. He's in his prime right now at 27 or 28 years old. So he's going to get paid here after next season. But watch out for the Wild. They have been
I'm
on a heater.
I'm a massive Kaprizov fan. I know you know that. I also am a huge believer in Matt Boldy. Have been, since day one with him. I really do think guys like that are can really take that team to the next level. And to your point, they need Gustafson to play really well in net. And for the most part this season he has. Obviously he's had a hiccup or two, as most goalies do. But I mean, if he can play at a high level like he has for the most part, this team really can go a long, long ways. And especially if Kaprizov is going to lead the league in scoring. I mean, this guy is electric. He's a difference maker with the puck. He's fast. I mean, he has all the intangibles. He's just a very good hockey player.
Yeah, 21 points in 11 games. So he's obviously on a heater. He's got 7 goals in the year, 14 assists. Matt Boldy, we talked about. Zuccarelli's got 11 points. Marco Rossi, young kid. He's, I think, their second line center. He's been putting up some good points. But, all their top players are plus in the differential and the plus minus. And
That's
as I mentioned
huge.
before, they're plus 13 on the year. They're undefeated at home, and they're 5-1-1 on the road. So they're just playing really good hockey right now. Watch out for the Wild.
Hey, the Wild are wild, baby. I love when Minnesota Wild is good at hockey. It makes it a lot of fun. But the first team I'm going to talk about this last week is the Carolina Hurricanes. I feel like they are quietly having a really, really good start to the season. They were 3-0 this last week with a 4-3 victory over Vancouver, an 8-2 thrashing over Boston, and a 4-2 win over the Caps. So just a really, really good week for them. They are, a top ranked team and the fewest goals allowed this season. That's a fantastic stat to have. The plus 16 goal differential, their top 5 power play and a top 7 penalty kill. And talking about Carolina having a quietly good start, Martin Nietzsche is quietly putting together one of the best starts in the hockey season, right?
Talk
I
about a
mean,
guy being on a heater, right? That guy is putting up some numbers right now.
and he is just not talked about like he should. I mean, he is
Nope.
not, and he is so overshadowed by all the other greats in the league. And I get it, man. There's tons of really, really good hockey players in this league right now, but he is a very good, reliable player. And I think this is how you pronounce his name. I do struggle from time to time, especially with some of these names that really get long, but Kochetkov is really stepping it up and being a fantastic, reliable option with Freddie Anderson being out. That is huge for this team. If Freddie Anderson comes back and they can have Kochetkov as their 1B. We've talked many a times on this show already about how having a good second option at goalie down the stretch and through the playoffs is huge. And
Yeah.
this is everything that they need right now, and they are firing on all cylinders.
I don't know if you noticed, I picked up Kochetkov in my fantasy league and started him because to your point, he's had a couple really, really good games here over the last week or week and a half.
Rightfully
You,
so.
you go back to Martin Nikich, I think he's got 17 points in his last 7 games. I
Yeah.
mean, the guy is absolutely on fire. 10 games, 18 points, plus 8. Yeah, you're right.
But
Nobody ever talks about him.
you don't hear about him, man.
You got
Like I said,
Aho, you got Svechnikov, Seth Jarvis, Brent Burns on the blue line, Jacob Slavin. They got a really good team. And I was a little concerned about them to start. I really wanted to pick them as one of my Eastern Conference finalists, but I just didn't see it earlier on in the season. But I think if you recall, I had them going to the Cup a couple years ago.
yeah, yep.
And when Gunsel was still there, and I really thought they were going to be, or when Gunsel got there, I really thought they were going to make a run for it that year. They had all the pieces in place, and they just couldn't get past some of the other studs in the Eastern Conference. But I'm curious, have you looked to see what their line to win the Cup or win the East is, one or the other? Have you checked that?
I think to win the cup, they were top 5 or top 6. Maybe they were in the plus 800 to plus 950 range, I believe, and that's very intriguing,
Yeah, you could
right?
have picked them up probably 2 weeks ago at a much better
Oh,
payout for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. They're everybody's catching on that they're getting hot at the obviously not the right time. It's still early, but I mean there's no bad time to be the hottest team in hockey, and they are one of those teams right now. So, well, who's your second team you got this last week?
Oh, I hate to, it pains me to say it because I'm not much of a Boston fan, but they just the last two games they pitched shutouts. Corpusalo had one and Swayman had the other. And hey, we've talked about this on the show numerous times. Goalies, hot goalies, stud goalies, or if you don't have any of those, you got to have a great tandem. And both those guys have played really well. I do know that I just read today, in fact, that if you listen to Jim Montgomery's post game presser the other night, he benched Pasta in the third period, and it really didn't want to talk about why. He just said it was a decision we made, and that's all I'm going to say. So I don't think there's much there. Maybe he was just trying to send a message to the team because Pasta's obviously the horse on that roster. But Boston, they're always there. We talked about this. They don't go away, and I still don't know how they're doing it. I don't know if you saw Charlie Coyle's goal the other night. Collin, I don't even know how to explain what he did, but it was one of the prettiest goals I've seen in a
Oh,
long time.
our group text was going nuts about it.
Yeah,
Rightfully
that
so.
was against Seattle against Joey Decord, I think, and he just undressed him. It was sick. The
Put him in a
hands,
blender.
I mean, the moves he made on him, and literally he scored behind the goalie inside the crease. I don't, you just don't see that very often. So, and McAvoy's been playing well as their number one defenseman. So, Boston's is always going to be there. We're going to probably talk a lot about them this year on the show, but they have just pitched back-to-back shutouts, outscoring their opponent 5-0 in those two games. So kudos to
Hey,
them.
we have seen a team like Boston obviously have the utmost success, but we've also seen a team like Boston when they don't have, huge expectations come through and have fantastic seasons when they didn't have the highest of high expectations. This is still a really, really good hockey team, absolutely. And I don't think if we woke up and the Stanley Cup Finals were on, like obviously it's a stretch, but I mean, would we ever really be shocked if we woke up and saw Boston in the finals?
No,
No, I don't think anybody would, right? I mean, this is a team that finds ways, and credit to them. And I can't say I love because it's crazy, but I love the benching of Pasta. I mean, if you're a coach and you show that you can go bench your best player, I mean that's balls that clank, and I love that, man. Like you are not bigger than this team. Sit down. I mean, and maybe I'm overthinking that, or maybe there wasn't even a real reason, or maybe I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of reasons that we don't know that could be out there. We're not on that bench.
right,
We're not in that locker room. We're not a part of that
right.
conversation. But like, if you prove that you're going to go bench your best player, that lets the whole team know, hey, we got to figure it out, man, because he ain't afraid to sit any of us down. So I love
Jim
it.
Montgomery, yeah, Jim Montgomery doesn't fool around, and we can only read from the outside looking in on the surface. It's interesting to see some a coach do that, but I'll be curious to see how the team responds to that. And I would suspect that Boston's going to go on a run, especially the way their goalie tandem is playing right now, for sure.
Absolutely. So the last team we're going to talk about here from the previous week, and I mentioned them a second ago. I'm going to talk about San Jose. Obviously, I don't have a long segment here for San Jose because they haven't had the most success, but I'm actually going to pretty well repeat myself from last week, but in opposite metrics. So since I shit on them, they went 3-1. They were 3-0, and I think they
Yeah,
either lost on
uh,
Saturday or Sunday. What
they
they
had a
lost
3 game
their
winning streak last week. You're
Yeah,
right.
they lost their last game of the week, which is either Saturday or Sunday, and it was to Vancouver. But they beat Utah 5-4, LA 4-2, and Chicago 3-2. Now, let me preface this. They were 3-0 in that stretch. Not three very good teams. I mean, Utah was playing above standards and expectations early. So, I mean, I'll give them that. But those are three teams that San Jose probably should beat or find ways to win. Lost to Vancouver, kind of saw that coming, especially after a 3-game win streak. You didn't think they were going to stay hot for that long. But last week we talked about how they had no players with a positive plus minus. Ron, they now have 4 players that are 0 or better on this plus minus. I think their best one being at +2. I think they have 2 at 0 and 2 at +2. Still
Yeah, in the
not
last
good.
yeah. In the last week, Zetterlund's a +6. He's the young kid that they drafted a few years
Yep.
ago. He was a +6 in the last week, and so was former Blue Jake Wallman, who actually
Jake
had
Wallman,
a
baby.
really nice goal from the high slot that during that 3-game win streak. Tyler Toffoli, the guy's just a grinder, right? He's
Yep.
at a +2 in the last week. So yeah, it was fun to see them get out of that slump, and maybe we need to start talking bad about some of these teams that we want to see get lifted up. Maybe we
Yeah, the
start.
Blues suck. Blues are terrible, you know. All right, so the Blues, everybody fade us and bet the Blues this week.
That's right.
N
That's right.
No, but in all seriousness, good for San Jose. I mean, that was the worst start in NHL history, and we dwelled on that last week, and rightfully so. I mean, that's things that need to be talked about. I mean, when you're performing at such a terrible level like that, it has to be addressed. And obviously, I'm sure they had plenty of those conversations in their clubhouse talking about how
Yeah.
this is awful. And we even talked about last week how they're on a rebuild, and I made the joke about how they're on like a generational rebuild pace. That's the way it started out, and then Josh talked about how they were wheelbarrowing or they were mixing cement with a shovel and we were wheelbarrowing. I mean, we had all of it for San Jose last week. So want to give them credit this week. Mackenzie Blackwood had a good game this week
Yeah.
against Chicago.
Saw
That's
that.
good. Vita
Yeah.
Vanchek had a good game against LA. I mean, those are things that need to happen. You know, you are on a rebuild. Those are things that need to happen to just win some games. You know, you don't go down in history as the worst team of all time because you're rebuilding. Win some games, you know, at least do enough to put some asses in your seats in the stands because the place was probably starting to trend in the direction of being pretty empty.
Yeah, and there's still, they had such a giant hole to climb out of that 9-foot foundation that we talked about. They couldn't climb out of that, but they did. They're at 8 points on the year, 3-8-2 is their record. They're still in last place in the league. It's still going to be a long season, but it's nice to see them, get the taste of victory and go through that 3-game win streak last week.
Hey, they took the lid off, and sometimes the first one's the hardest one, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
took the lid off,
yeah.
got the first win, got that off their back, and now maybe they can turn the page and play some decent hockey going forward. So that kind of wraps up what we had for this last week. We're going to turn the page onto this week of the NHL season, and we're going to talk about 3 teams in the coming week. So first, you know, let's talk about the New Jersey Devils. They got 4 games this upcoming week. They play Edmonton, Montreal, the Islanders, and San Jose. They were 2-5 in their last 7. That is not good for New Jersey Devils standards, considering the expectations that this team had. So they really need to go win 3 out of these 4 because they should definitely. I can't say definitely. It's hockey. It's professional sports, so any team can win on any given day. But their hardest game this coming week is Edmonton, and I think that they can win that game, and I think they can easily win Montreal, the New York Islanders, and the San Jose Sharks. They should win 3
Yeah.
of those 4.
Yeah, they've been hovering at 500, 4-4-2 in their last 10, but Markstrom's been playing good. I know you're going to talk a little bit about him, but with McDavid being out and the other, teams on their schedule, I don't see why they shouldn't get 6, 7, 8 points this week, just based on that schedule.
I mean, I think if anything less than that would probably be a letdown, right? I mean, it's just not good. But talking about Markstrom a little bit, in his last 3 games, he allowed 2 goals against Anaheim, a shutout against Vancouver, and 2 goals against Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Markstrom's playing good hockey in net for them. I mean, he really is playing really like we talked earlier in the season about how with this team going forward, Markstrom just has to be like an above average goalie, and he's doing that right now.
Yeah, if you look at the standings in the Metro, and we talked about in the very beginning of our inaugural podcast this year, the Metropolitan Division is stacked. The Rangers, and obviously are my pick to come out of that Eastern Conference. But Jersey was sitting there in second place before they hit a little rough patch, and now Carolina and Washington have jumped up to second, third in the conference, and then all 3 of those teams, Jersey, Washington, Carolina, all have 16 points. So Jersey's got to take advantage of the situation that they're in right now. They've been kind of flat at 4-4-2, but again, we
Yes.
talked about their schedule. This is the opportunity where they need to maybe make a move and get up to that first, second range in the Metro, because the Metro is a stacked division.
Yes, it is.
You know,
Yes, it
Pittsburgh
is.
and New York Islanders are supposed that historically have been there and made the playoffs. They're struggling a little bit right now, but Jersey's got to make a move here and try to get back up into the top of that Metro division. And
I
this
can
is the week I
promise
think they
you,
can do it.
I can promise you, I didn't see the Caps being over Jersey at this point. And that,
No,
and I
and
it's early, but
I'm going to talk about the Capitals next, and we're going to tie it into what Ovechkin's been doing. But man, they are on both Carolina and Washington 8-2 in their last 10. Carolina's actually won 6 straight. Like here they come, right? We kind of not a lot of us talked about them. None of us picked
that's
them.
because that's why.
That's exactly right.
That is
So
exactly why they're doing what they're doing.
I'd be curious to see if Josh was on with us tonight. Maybe we can get his take on this when he's back with us next week to see what he thinks of the Devils. As you guys know, he picked the Devils to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, so I know he's high on them and he's high on Markstrom. So maybe he'll have some good stuff to report after their 4-game schedule the upcoming week.
So before you talk about the Caps a little bit and transition into some milestone conversation, I'll go ahead and take this one over and talk about Edmonton real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to talk real quick about how Edmonton blew my 3-team hockey parlay I had this week with an empty netter
2.4
with
seconds.
2.4 seconds left. Just, I had Edmonton making it far in the playoffs, and just, you know what? I deserve that. I deserve that for not taking them -1.5. I deserve everything that happened right there. Congrats to Draisaitl for lifting this team up. But in all seriousness, coming this week, they play Jersey, Vegas, Vancouver. Pretty tough stretch right there, Ron. I mean, that's about as tough as it gets. Probably the toughest schedule of the week, in my opinion, the way it looks. Talking about Jersey here a second ago, how they have to get it going and find it. And Vegas is hot as anyone right now. Vancouver is a good hockey team. So 3 really tough opponents, especially without your best player, aka the best player in hockey, and Connor McDavid since he's on the shelf. But Draisaitl, you mentioned this earlier a little bit. Draisaitl has really taken I can't say a massive step forward because he's one of the best players in hockey, but he's really lifted this team up and filling in that absence
Yeah.
and proven to be like, hey, it's okay. Like nobody panic. I'm still here. Let's revolve it around me now for a little bit, and I'll take us to the promised land as well. So I think they try to go in and win 2 of these 3 and continue heading in the right direction. And they have a 2-game win streak coming into this, so, ride the momentum and really transition still in the right direction without McDavid being there.
Yeah, that goal he put up the other night, puck was on the boards. He's in the slot. Literally, he's probably 20 feet off the goalie crease. He receives the puck he's facing center ice, receives the puck on his forehand. One touches it, and in one motion, backhand top shelf. It was one of the sickest backhand goals I've ever seen. He is literally, Collin, like you said, just said, jump on my back, boys. We're
Yeah.
okay. Connor's going to be out a couple weeks, but we
Mhm.
can do this. Zach Hyman, I think he had a hat trick last week,
Yes.
right? So they still have the talent there. They are still one of the top teams in the West. Yeah, they're going to go through a 2-week, 3-week deal without their leader in McDavid, but I don't have any concern about him either, Collin. I think they're going to be fine.
If anything to me, because I have Edmonton going so far in the playoffs, obviously missing McDavid. Like I know I keep stating the obvious, but like that's huge. But this is like almost like it reassures me almost that they're a really, really good hockey team because even without their best player, they're still finding ways to win. And we've also talked about here, I think it was on our inaugural episode as well, that Skinner is another goalie that you just have to be above average, dude. Just be an above average goalie, and this team will carry you.
Well, I was just looking. I was waiting for you to mention his name because I just pulled him up. Last 3 games, he's 2-1. Yeah, he had a letdown against Columbus, gave up 6. Not a good night for him. But against Pittsburgh, he posted a shutout, 27 saves, and then against Calgary, that game the other night you mentioned, got the win and a .935 save percentage. Only gave up 2 goals on 29 shots. So I'm sorry, 31 shots. So, Skinner is going to be the key to them. He carried them through the playoffs at times last year. Hasn't been that great this year. He's got an 88.1 save percentage, a 3.31 GAA. That's not good, right? So it's good to see that he's picked up a couple really good wins last week, giving up 2 goals, in those 2 games I mentioned.
Yeah, man, if he can just play some average hockey in net for them, this team's got everything they need. I mean, that's obvious, right? I mean, they did it last year. They came up just short. And like we talked about early on, I think they had that really slow start, just that hangover, just that feeling of being back on the ice for some meaningful hockey again. And the last time you left it was a heartbreak. So I think it took us some time, and I think they're going to come into their own here and be a real threat down the stretch. I think they're back in the top three for Stanley Cup odds favorites, and they're a really good team, man. So now, why don't you tell me a little bit about this Washington Caps talk? You told me you're excited to talk about this, and you got some good things for us here. So let's dive into
Well,
that.
full disclosure, I really hesitated about going into um, the whole Ovechkin recap, but what this guy's doing is incredible. I don't want to curse him. So I'm going to look up the hockey gods and say, please, I'm just sharing this as information. I don't want him to cool
Hey,
off.
I'm just stating the obvious here. Don't take this out of context and kill us. Don't
Yeah.
kill over here.
Yeah, he's on an absolute tear, Colin. He's got 7 goals in 11 games this season. And as I mentioned before, Washington is probably one of the hottest teams in the league right now, 8-2 in their last 10. I mentioned that a minute ago, 8-3 overall, 6-1 at home, plus 13 goal differential. They the last, I guess, up their next 5 games coming up. They're playing some good teams. They got Nashville at home. They're at St. Louis. They got Toronto at home, Pittsburgh at home. Again, Pittsburgh we've talked about. They've kind of cooled off a little bit, and then they have to go to Colorado at the end of next week to try to keep the momentum going. But that should be a really fun matchup with McKinnon and Rantanen and Ovechkin on the ice together. A lot of star power there, but Capitals, as I mentioned, they're 1 point behind the Rangers in the Metro. I don't know how Ovechkin's doing this at the age of 39, but you know, give credit to the team. It's not all just Ovechkin. Dylan Strome's been playing well. He's put up quite a bit of points here in the last week and a half. John Carlson, their stud defenseman. Goaltending hasn't been great. They got Chucky Sideburns and they got Logan Thompson, both around 2.7 and 2.9 GAA on the season, respectively. But
Real
make no
quick before
mistake,
you go any further, I'm not really in love with that goalie situation
I'm
either.
not
Like,
either.
I think down the stretch that catches up to them.
It may, yeah, it very well may. But we got a taste of Chucky D. Sideburns here in St. Louis, and he had some moments there when he was filling in for Bennington a couple years ago. Is he ready to be a true number one? Probably not. And I think that's why they went out and got Logan Thompson for a little insurance. But they've got, as I mentioned, they got a tough schedule coming up. Next 5 games, they're playing some pretty good teams. They just lost to Carolina the other night. So but we talked about how hot Carolina's been. Those two are neck and neck in the second and third slot in that division, both 8-2. So, you know, again, I'm really hesitant, Colin. I do not want to curse the grade 8, but I just looked at some of the stuff he did. Maybe we can transition now into the milestones, because that
Well,
is
yeah,
the
let me
milestone.
help you so you don't feel like you curse him if he falls apart. We're going to talk about the milestones now. This is your segment every week that we're going to brush up on and touch. So, hey, don't feel bad if he falls apart. All you're doing is telling us what he's done and what he's got left to reach these milestones. So, don't feel too bad. Just give it to us.
Yeah, this is just for information purposes only. How about that? So, he's in his 20th season. Um, he's got, as I mentioned, 7 goals in 11 games. I think that's a pace of around 52 goals. Now, If it was anybody other than Ovechkin, I'd say, no, but that's just to pace through 11 games. There's no way that a guy can sustain that. Yes, he can. No, if anybody can do it, it's him. So I told Josh, and Josh and I were on the same page on this. I was expecting him to get around that 30 goal range, and I didn't really think much about whether or not he was going to actually sniff the record and catch up to Gretzky this season. But I got to kind of reconsider that, right? I mean, what he's doing is incredible. So let me just give you a couple Ovechkin stats here. He's played in 1,437 games. He's at 860 goals. So he's only 34 behind to tie and 35 to break the record. 0.60 goals per game. So he's scoring essentially in every other game and maybe another one in between there over his career, which is insane. He also has 704 assists. So we talk about his goal scoring, but he's big. He hits people. He plays hard. He's got those trademark yellow shoelaces, and he's been doing it this is his 20th season now. And 13 years of 40 plus goals, 5 years of more than 30 goals. He only had one season in the 2021 season where he only had 24 goals. So, what he's doing is incredible. I'm going to put it in perspective too, Collin. You may be too young to remember Gordie Howe or have ever seen him play. I actually remember him as a kid playing for the Red Wings. He played there 25 seasons, I believe. He had 50 goals 0 times in his career. Gordie Howe had 801 goals in his career. Now, mind you, he played 6 years in the WHA in his 40s and late 40s and early 50s. He came back at the age of 51. Gordie Howe did and scored 15 goals in the NHL. Like, wrap your head around that. Now, that was back in 1980, right? But could you imagine, let's just say hypothetically, Ovechkin's 39. If we can get maybe 5 more years out of him,
Oh,
imagine what he would do, right?
do you like? With that being said, like, do you think his body can hold because to your point, like you said a second ago, he hits people. Like he is a do-it-all
Yes.
player.
He's not afraid of contact, is he?
No, block shots, fights people, takes hits, lays the hits. I mean, 5 more is a lot to ask for a guy that does everything that he does because he puts his body through so much.
But wouldn't it be cool?
Oh, it'd be
With
incredible.
5 more years. I'm looking at his career stats here. So, 5 more years, even if he just puts up another 100 goals, right?
I was gonna say if he scores just 20 goals this season, the 5
Right.
remaining seasons, I mean yeah.
He's coming back next year, whether that's his last season in the NHL or whether or not Washington decides to keep him. Maybe he has to take a little bit of pay cut to fit in the cap. He's making $9.5 million in his current contract.
It's tough to give him that at the age of 41.
It really is, and a guy like Yager, who's still playing over in the Czech league, I believe, and a guy like Gordie Howe, who I mentioned at the age of 51 was playing in the NHL for I think the Hartford Whalers, if I'm not mistaken. But if you take those, Gordie Howe had 801 goals in 20 something seasons for the Detroit Red Wings, spent his whole career there. He went on to play in the WHA, then his last season in the NHL at 51. He scored another, I think he ended up, if you add those additional WHA years, he had 975 career goals just in the regular season, right? So if Ovechkin gets to 895 and plays to actually get to 976, he would be the all-time leading scorer in all history of hockey, right? Including WHA. So it's just incredible what this guy is doing. He's so fun to watch. He's having a ball out there. You can tell he's just enjoying himself. So crazy to see him do it, but I hope he can keep it up. And wouldn't that be awesome if come April he's on the doorsteps of Gretzky's 894?
I mean, dude, if he elevates this team, I mean, if he's doing that, I mean, Washington's got to be in conversation of being playoff bound. I mean, with that being said, though, I think it does circle back to the goaltending for
Goaltending,
them.
that's right.
You
I
know, I
couldn't
mean,
agree with you more.
And I think, talking about that, let's say he does give us 5 more years. I think you could see a situation where it really depends for him on what direction the team is going, right? I mean, does he want to go play somewhere else? I mean, that's a question that probably only he knows the answer to right now.
Yeah,
And does he want to re-sign with them and put his body through more if they're not trending in the right direction? I mean, because we talked about this before. I don't think Washington's a team that is the most dangerous team to play against or like
yeah.
really there down the stretch at all. I don't think.
I don't think there's many people picking them to even make the playoffs this year just because of the
No,
goalie situation and the lack of depth. And, they lost a couple players, the last few years for cap reasons. But, yeah, nobody had them doing what they're doing. And here they are and basically tied for second place in the Metro with an 8-3 record. It's incredible.
absolutely. So I mean, if I'm the Caps and I'm Ovi, I'm riding the high while we can. I think, and maybe this is one of those times where they're a team that had no expectations really, and just continues to build off momentum. I mean, that does happen. That really does happen. And I mean, look at Vegas in their first year of being a team. They had very mild expectations, got hot, rode the wave, and continued to build off that, believed in each other, and turned the page. And anytime you have Ovi on your team, I mean, the team looks at him, and if he's feeling himself, the rest of the team's feeling themselves. I mean, he is truly the centerpiece. So,
Well, make no
oh,
mistake about it. Those guys are feeding off what he's doing. They
without
know
a doubt, without a
they
doubt,
want him to get that record this year, right? They
a
know.
hundred percent, a hundred
So
percent.
it's really it's probably pretty easy for some of those guys to jump on the ice knowing they're getting the lineup and set up a sniper like Ovechkin on the power play, right? He's it's fun to watch. I know Josh was watching their game the other night and he was talking about it. So we wanted to give you guys a little more color on what he's done in his career and give you some numbers to chew on and just wrap your head around the um, the legend of what he's doing out there on the ice. Can't wait for the spring. I hope he keeps this pace up because if he does, he might even have it by the end of winter.
Wouldn't
Come
that be nuts?
the back of the Four Nations face-off, maybe he'll be in that range, in that 890 range, and coming into February and March for the stretch run, and who knows, maybe he can lead them to the playoffs. It is going to come down to goaltending, but fun to watch, isn't it?
Hey, that'd be incredible. And I love milestones like this. This is fantastic on any sport. So obviously, with no Marty here, we're not going to do his segment of In the Crease. We will pick back up on that next week. So, real quick, Ron, if you have anything else to add, now's the time.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple more milestones, very, very smaller level than what we're talking about with Ovechkin. But Jonathan Huberdeau is two assists away from 500, and believe it or not, Ryan O'Reilly is 5 assists away from 500 assists in his career. Haven't
Really?
talked about that. I just happened to catch that. I didn't know he had that many assists in his. He started out in Colorado, spent many years in Buffalo, and then came to St. Louis. He's a setup man. We've talked about him before, so he's 5 away from 500. Kucherov is now 7 points back from his 900th point, so I
Yep.
expect him the way he's been playing, the way Tampa's been playing. Braden points out for a few games day to day. That's not
Max
going to help.
2 weeks, right? Max 2 weeks, he'll have this milestone, right?
Yeah, I would say probably within the next 2 weeks because where's he at in the overall standings point wise? I think he's still up there with he's got 20 points in the season. So I mean, he's only 1 point behind Kaprizov, Makar, and Sam
I was going
Reinhart.
to say, I
So
think he was top three. Yeah. So,
yeah, he's
two
he's
weeks.
actually tied for fourth now with McKinnon.
Okay.
Um and Mark Stone. So Kucherov's there every year. I think we'll probably see that 900th point coming soon. And then McDavid, obviously, we talked about him being out, but he's still 8 back from his 1,000 point, which we talked about in last week's episode. So those are some of the milestones I wanted to catch everybody up on, Collin. So with that, we can move on.
Hey, well, I don't have much else to add either. Like I said, we'll get back next week on Marty's segment of In the Crease. But real quick, before every episode ends, I try to give a fantasy guy that I want to make sure we have our eyes on. And this week, I'm not really going to dive deep into the trenches of who like is under 35% owned. I just want to make sure that with Valerie Nichushkin coming back to this Colorado Avs lineup here, I want to make sure that everybody knows that he needs to be owned in all fantasy leagues. Make sure he is on hopefully your roster, not somebody else's roster. If he is free agent, get him now. If you do a what's it called, like a salary free agency, or the bidding,
Yeah.
the fab free agency, if you do that, make sure you are spending a pretty penny to make sure you don't miss out on him. He is an absolute difference maker and can help catapult your team to the next level for fantasy hockey moving forward. Also, let's talk about Lucas Dostal. I think I'm pronouncing his name
Yeah.
correctly. He is a goalie taking over for Anaheim with John Gibson being out. He's posted a .937 save percentage. Let's make sure we're not missing out on him. Let's make sure that he is getting added in all leagues, especially if you need some goalie help.
Hey, and Colin, a lot of people shy away from him because he plays on Anaheim, and Anaheim has been rebuilding, it seems like, for a long time
A
now.
little generational rebuild again.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised John Gibson's still there because
Yeah.
he's got a fantastic resume. He's in his probably mid 30s now. He deserves to go to a team that he can have a chance to make a run at the Stanley Cup.
Yes, he does.
He's been there in Anaheim, and they've been rebuilding and retooling and high draft picks and letting free agents go. But this kid, Dostal, he's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh-oh,
Yeah,
Colin, we're gonna have to pause. Do you hear that? Tornado sirens.
you got tornado sirens going off mid-show, huh?
Yeah, can you just turn on the weather and see what they have, honey? Just turn on 1002. Well, they've
Hey,
stayed with us.
I'm gonna leave this all in the show. I'm not cutting. This is all good content right here. This is we're bad. We're going through it right
Hey,
here.
I think Ovechkin just scored again.
Light the lamp. Ovechkin scored again. The sirens are going off for him. But hey, perfect timing, I guess. Well, really, no perfect timing for a tornado. But we are wrapping it up anyway. The last real quick thing we had was my buy sell feature, and I am going to buy Vegas at plus 1,800 for the Stanley Cup Championship right now. Those are juicy odds. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. And a plus 17 goal differential. So a really good Vegas team that I know Marty and Josh are both extremely high on. So get them while you can at those juicy odds. Real quick, before we get out of here, before Ron takes shelter, I want to talk about how if you're tuning in, make sure you're following our socials. Our tumblers are in. We had them engraved. We are we are giving away 3 of those. Go on Facebook, and you can find our Facebook page at Deep Threat Sports Network and see what you have to do to be entered in that raffle. We will give 3 of those away. We will ship if we have to. With that being said, follow us on all of our socials at X at DT_sports_, Facebook Deep Threat Sports Network, Instagram Deep Threat Sports with a Z, TikTok Deep Threat Sports Network, YouTube Deep Threat Sports, and Spotify Deep Threat Sports. Ron, we'll wrap this up real quick and get out of here, buddy, so you can take shelter. Make sure the cars are in the garage so you don't get any hail damage. But hey, man, this has been tons of fun. Next week, we'll have Marty and Josh back with us. Once again, this is Crease to Crease. That's Ron. I'm Collin. Until next time, everybody. Peace.
See ya.